Hello everyone, my name is Tanya and welcome to the most interesting people on my timeline. This is a multimedia series featuring people who have crossed my path or caught my attention with their work IRL or in the digital space. If you're new here, welcome. This is episode 5, and for me, this is kind of the first episode to a season 2. Season 1 consisted of 4 episodes featuring people working in film, in music, in fashion, and in other industries. And you can find it anywhere that you get your podcast, and you can find more information at taniadoes.com/interesting people. If you're not new here, thank you for sticking around. Welcome to season 2. This episode, like I said, was meant to be part of season 1, but I think it beautifully became the season opener for this fall-winter season 2. Today's episode features Applewhaite and his approach to filmmaking, academic research, and the success of his short documentary, A New England Document, which is the work that inspired me to approach Che for this project. You can find more info and links to Che's work in the description box or on taniadoes.com/Che Applewhaite. Welcome to episode 5 or season 2, episode 1 of the most interesting people on my timeline. Let me introduce you to Che. Che is an award-winning filmmaker, artist, and writer who I had the honor of crossing paths with because of a research fellowship that we did in undergrad. His short documentary, A New England Document, premiered in 2020 at the Sheffield Doc Fest in the UK. This short film went on to receive the Best Emerging Artist Jury Award at the 2021 Mimesis International Film Festival and has since been screened at multiple film festivals around the world, including the Third Horizon Film Festival, the 28th New York African Film Festival, just to name a few. There are many more things that this amazing project has been a part of. One of the main sources of inspiration for A New England Document was a photography of a boy standing behind a camera that is part of the Marshall Collection at Harvard University's Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology. Che dives into the history of the collection this photograph is from through archival work and by interviewing the Marshall's daughter, Elizabeth Marshall Thomas. The film asks, what would the boy in the photograph have said about the Marshalls if he had studied them too? A New England Document is currently streaming on the Criterion channel, which is run, by the Criterion Collection. They curate a lot of really important films and programs, and you might have seen famous people pick DVDs out of the Criterion closet. But in any case, they have their own streaming service called the Criterion channel, where you can find a bunch of amazing films as well as Che's short documentary.
Thanks, Tanya, for having me. My name is Che Applewhaite. I'm a filmmaker, an artist, and I also write.
In terms of your work, you mentioned like A New England Document, which was it wasn't the first work I knew about you, because since we've been in Melon Maze, I knew you were talking about your other work that you were doing. But it was great just seeing it like on the Criterion channel. Like I put it up on my projector and I just kind of like sat with it for a bit. And it was great to do that and like have that time from when I first saw it to like now that we're actually getting to talk. Because there's a lot within that, and there's like different. It's one of those works where like you learn so much more, for me, like kind of after it, because I just saw it and then I dove more into like the material that you had and that accompanied it. And I think that's really, when you can engage people for longer than what the work is, like that's pretty special. And the main theme of that was like looking at like these two ethnographers and coming at from a position of what their subject would have wanted to know about the people studying them. So I don't know if you wanted to dive more into that idea of now you becoming like an observer or like coming from a position of that.
Yeah, I think the camera is a powerful tool and it provides kind of power to people who use it, like especially if you use it in a very intentional way. And that was what they did in the 50s, right? And I think where I'm coming from it is trying to kind of reclaim some of that power, but also not say that reclaim some of that power for me as a documentarian, whilst realizing I'm also part of the tradition that they have put in motion, right? So it's trying to walk a fine line, because I think a lot of these questions in terms of reciprocity, reflexivity, like power and equity in documentary are unresolved, but also there are certain things that are resolved in terms of like, white people should not be looking at like otherness in a way that's really like exploitative and demonizing, you know, or not just demonizing, but kind of misrepresentative. And so the film for me, I think, was a way to just actually understand how I felt about a particular tradition that kind of, you know, started at Harvard. People call it like the American personal ethnographic film tradition, if we're talking about academic language, but like I just came into it as a student wanting to make a film, you know what I mean? Like in terms of that, I think it allowed me to kind of share a perspective with this person, this boy, indigenous boy from the like 1950s, who was of course in the photo, you can see he's very curious about what this camera does, right? Like I don't know what exactly he's thinking, but I know he's curious, and that enough is to show that, you know, we have a connection. I'm curious about what's going on with this camera when I was making the film. So, and I still am curious about what's going on with this camera. It's like period. So that's why I continue to make films. So it's like it was a way for me to feel like I wasn't actually alone. I think in this process of being curious as someone who is trying to understand that within a like a non-white kind of subjectivity, right? Like not trying to take on practices that I saw were kind of, you know, were not attentive to one's body, one's history, one's mind, and how one's mind works, right? And I think that's also a lot in the how the film is formed. Is, you know, it's skittish, it's kind of like back and forth. Like that's a lot of how double consciousness, you know, presents itself, at least for me. And so that's where the film um, came from.
As I mentioned, Shay and I met in college. We were part of a research fellowship program. And I think that time was one of, like, I have the best academic memories from that. I don't have many amazing academic memories, but just being able to share our work like once a week with our cohort was amazing. I really admired Shay's work because we were both working with film and video, as well as having a research component to that, a research written component. And like I mentioned in Hamas and Sonia's episodes, I really wanted to ask about his relationship, you know, post grad with Harvard, and specifically because a New England document utilizes a lot of materials from a Harvard collection, question some of, you know, Harvard's academic and research practices. And if you read Shay's other work, you will see that, you know, he's not afraid to call, you know, the institution and its practices into question. So I'm curious about this relationship to Harvard and its relation to his work.
These are feelings that I'm like working through as well, but post grad and having your work, you know, tied to Harvard, and also like having like different feelings about Harvard. How have you navigated that?
Well, very recently, actually, I had to kind of bring it up at a film seminar called the Flaherty in upstate New York, because unfortunately, it felt like certain dynamics that I saw at Harvard were being replicated there. And so it was disheartening, but it was also familiar. And I think that's kind of, I realized, wow, this problem's not, it's bigger than this institution, which I knew it was, because that's kind of what the film is about. Like, you know, it's about like how these problems are actually like sedimenting in an institution. They're not actually, they're not like only the institution, you know what I mean? I think it reminded me and triggered me actually very much, because I was like, I thought I was done with this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but I think I'm realizing actually more and more that if you're working in a particular kind of documentary space, you know, and you want kind of particular kind of money, particularly, you know, I mean, like that, you're going to engage with certain dynamics that are historically violent and contemporarily kind of violent. And like, I think it's just, for me, I'm still learning how to navigate that as I operate in my career. But I think the film actually did help in the sense of kind of just being attentive to, you know, the evidence, right? And also kind of understanding that perspective is fragmented, you know, like within me, you know what I mean? Like between me and then the other people I'm talking to, no matter what race they are, and also realizing that as a creative person in the world, like I'm trying to, at the end of the day, work out something that I don't yet have words for, and try to share that with other people in the hope that we can find something together, you know what I mean? And like, I think grounding myself in spaces and possibilities that enable that is really what like keeps me going. I don't really want to speak on Harvard, I think, because it's quite honestly a provincial institution. Like they kind of overrepresent themselves and they have too much money. And so I'm just like, like I got the degree, I'm good. Like, I graduated, I'm good. Like, yeah. And like, I think being with the work being tied to Harvard, I think I'm happy with what it says about Harvard. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like if it was said something that was like celebratory, I'd be upset. You know what I mean? Like, but I also know I wouldn't do that. So it's kind of like it reflects who I am and who I was actually at that time. And so, but I've moved on. You know what I mean? And like, I think with my work now, like, I'm moving on more to themes and ways of making and collaboration, particularly like that I really I'm finding more fulfilling and more life giving. And so like I don't feel like I have to be against. I think that's kind of one thing I felt like at Harvard is I have to be against. I have to be against because there's so much crap I have to be against. And like I'm like, no, I don't have to be against. Actually, I can just do what I want to do. Like, and it'll be fine.
I feel very similarly of like being able to get out of like the bubble. And like I said, I tried to pursue grad school and like realized that wasn't it. Just moving from one institution to another. I don't know. Maybe later, but not right now.
Right now. Yeah.
And with that, like a lot of that has to do with Mel and Maze, but so like you said, like you approached it as a student, and I think that your approach to this work was interesting because you weren't like you were doing film, but like what you were like studying formally wasn't like film technically or anything like that. Like in terms of like you weren't in that department.
No. But I will say that like anthropology and film has a long history at Harvard, and so like that's kind of in some way what the film. The film is not about film, not photography, but like they are the people who are the fathers and mother of John Marshall who set up the Film Study Center. And so like their money actually was very instrumental in like creating the space that we still have, you know what I mean, to make films. And like I think Harvard is an interesting place in that regard that academia is wedded to art making, or at least tries to, like in that space. I think it's actually a valuable like endeavor in the sense of trying to make work that's critical and like cognizant of ideas, you know what I mean? Like ideas that are like referenced and cited, right? I think that's actually a noble aim. However, I just think it's like who is doing that and for what reason and how is power involved, you know what I mean? Like I think those questions aren't asked as much as they should be, in a space that is endowed with oil money, you know what I mean? Like, and it's a fact I've heard from a professor. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's a lot of entanglements, right, in that space. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't in the art department, I think. And that was also, I think, a benefit for me in the sense that I know there were other things happening there that I would have found frustrating, but I also found a lot of mentors in the art department, right? Like Joanna Pimenta, Carissa Rodriguez, and Islam, like people who like have stayed with me in terms of just conversation even after Harvard. And so like that's been really like wonderful just to have people I feel like are cognizant and are also teaching students things that I continue to want to learn.
As y'all can tell, a lot of research went into making a New England document. That's partially why it took so long for me to get this episode out. Aside from literally the dumbest technical difficulties, but and at the end of the day, it's a lot of research, a lot of analysis. And Che was even so kind as to send me the thesis written component that he submitted alongside this work. And it was amazing. So I wanted to know, just how Che would approach or like felt about someone who approached his work not knowing all of the additional academic material and context that go along with it.
We were watching your film, like I said, I like went and was like fascinated doing like the deep dive afterwards, looking at these documents and a lot of the research material that you sent. Maybe for someone who like maybe isn't like that, who was just at a gallery and like saw your film and like maybe didn't do the like any research afterwards or look into that, like how do you feel about that, like the different types of audiences that and like their level of engagement with it?
I think that's just it's I think before I would have been a bit more like frustrated, but now I'm like there's no need because like it's just different modes of relating to this work, like for me the work, it's a project and the work has different components that relate to each other, but they are standalone. You know what I mean? Like the essay, if I write something or publish something, I want to intend to, if someone just reads that, they're good. You know what I mean? Like they get something from it that's like useful for them, or just like it's a new experience. You know what I mean? Like, and so the film, if people are just watching the film in the gallery and like they're like, and if they're curious and they want to ask more, and they're like, oh, who are these people? Like, you know, like really like and like, you know, what I want to know the full history. Like, you know, there is stuff for them to look at for that. And like, I think because it is such a big topic, right? And like, it's not a feature film, it's not like a 30-minute film, it's a short film. But I think for me, it's like a kind of, what I think about it now, it's like a throat clearing gesture, in the sense of like, I needed to kind of like make this film to feel like I can say what I want to say, you know, and like, so for that reason, like, it's going to be partial, it's going to be like, you know, like compact, because like it's about actually like for me, like a way of relating to my career as a like a long-term endeavor. It's like, I don't just make a film to make a film. I make a film to understand something, to be like, okay, well, the next film will be, you know what I mean? Like, and then maybe that will change. And then maybe, you know, like, it's about trying to actually like understand things in continuum, you know what I mean? Like both with a continuum of something that I critique or I'm studying, you know, like, and also something that I'm moving on to. And I want to also like say like the study aspect of the work is a way of allowing the work to remain kind of active, in the sense of like, I'm not saying that this history is past, I'm saying that this history is ongoing. And so, you know, hopefully the film actually allows people to acknowledge the ways that they experience the dynamics, you know, of white supremacy, of like ethnography, of colonial ethnography particularly, of you know, erasure, of like archival institutions, of, you know, like these things. How do they experience that in their own context? You know what I mean? Whatever that is. And like, for example, I recently had a screening at the National Gallery of Art in the US, which was like astonishing, kind of crazy. But like, there was these two wonderful, wonderful older Black men in the audience who kept on asking questions. And they were like archivists and people who had like done study like late in life, you know, like done a PhD late in life, and continued to study throughout their life. And they were really like captivated by the work and like wanted to know more. And like, I think what was so like wonderful for me was that they saw the richness and the depth in it, you know what I mean? Like, and they went there, you know what I mean? Like, it's, and for me, it's like, if you want to go there, you can go there. If you don't want to go there, you don't have to go there. Like, I'm fine with that, you know what I mean? Because everyone's at their own point in their journey, you know, with these things, you know what I mean? Like, so I never want to feel like I'm pushing something on someone, you know what I mean? It's like, if you want to do the work, you can do the work. If you don't want to do the work, fine. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, and I'm not shady. Okay, that sounds shady, but like, and it probably kind of is, but it's just like, yeah, it's just like, well, we're different, you know, everyone's at a different place in relation to these things, you know what I mean? Like, and I think the work has to acknowledge that as well.
I really appreciate like learning that from you, because even me doing this project, right? Like maybe someone will like listen or watch the interview, and like my hope is that, you know, they'll also go to like my website and they'll see the links of your work and they'll actually watch it and like they'll like share it and engage. But not everyone's going to do that. Not everyone has to do that. Like, I know we as artists have very big visions for our work and we're very immersed in it, but some people will just like look at it on the surface level, and having to be okay with that and like understanding that people are going to get different things out of it too.
I think for me also, it's like, if I'm trying to make like the politics that I'm espousing in the work bigger, like have more people engage with it. And so like, I think it's also part of that, you know, and saying like, and for me, that's also like a response to academic knowledge and academic context, where it feels like the terms of engaging with the ideas are very set and very fixed. And if you don't engage with them in that way, you're just like, you know, sayonara. And so like, for me, it's actually a like also a response to that, and saying, no, actually have these different points, you know. And yeah.
I think I said it in the clip already, but you know, I really learned a great lesson from Che and about audience engagement, you know, and how they engage with one's work. And I think Che's work and journey is really interesting because he started this before the pandemic and was still continuing to develop it during the pandemic. And then, you know, I'm scrolling on Instagram and I'm seeing, you know, Che is still able to distribute and have so much success with this, and it was just amazing to see that he was still able to do this, and a lot of it was in these new virtual spaces that were created.
And with engagement, like I said, I've been following like your updates and was able to see like all this work because you post online, and like at least through Instagram, your captions are like long and beautiful and very thoughtful. And like me, I'll post an emoji, like that's it. But so how, or like why like Instagram or like social media as tools of an update?
Honestly, it's just professional practice. I feel like for me, and I was an artist, like I actually like used to hate Instagram with a vengeance, like just because it would give me anxiety, like high key, like it's like all these people, oh my god, like too much. And then so like, and I do take breaks from it, but I think now actually like it's helped actually like share my work with like people I really admire actually, and who are like, oh my god, you're following me. And like I'm just like, wow, like that's like they really like my, they engage, you know what I mean, like, and like that's really wonderful to see, to be honest. And it's also a way I think of tracking community for me. Like I can see, oh, who follows you, who you follow. I'm like, oh, cool, I like these people. Like, let me check out their work. You know what I mean? So it's like also seeing who is in conversation with each other, I think, which is often actually like what I'm for me, why I like art and film actually is like I like the conversation. I like feeling like I'm part of like a community of people who are like making and like engaging with similar questions. And I like being able to follow other people's work in that same way, right? So I'm like often on Instagram scrolling to see what other people have done. I'm like, oh my god, they have a new film out, like let me watch it. Or like, oh my god, this have a new person exhibition out, let me watch it. Like I think I could be better actually, like, and be more frequent on my posts, or more open in terms of process, which I think I want to be more open in terms of process. But I'm a very private person in general, and so like it's just not something that comes naturally to me. I do have to push myself to even post. Like sometimes I will have to like be like on a train, and I'm posting before the train fucking gets to the destination, because if I don't do it now, I won't do it like for the next week or 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, and full disclosure, I can be quite slow on emails, even if I want to be in conversation with someone. It's not because I don't want to be in conversation with them. It's because sometimes like I think I'm more focused on doing the creative work than I am in that communication. But I know it's really important to keep up kind of the communication and keep up just seeing what people are doing, and just also sharing, you know what I mean? Sharing is very important to me in general. So that's why I'm really glad you even approached me for this interview.
I think you're one of the people who I'm like speaking with, that's in a unique position of your work has also been shown like physically, like in galleries, at festivals. You've been able to go to festivals, but there was also like a period of it being virtual, and again, you're also sharing updates on social media. Like how, like, can you talk about that difference in experience? And like, yeah.
I mean, that's interesting you put that, because I didn't think of it like that before, but now you mention it, I do think, because I emerged basically as an artist in a pandemic, you know what I mean? Like my first screening was in 2020 June, like, high pandemic, you know what I mean? So like, and I actually was going through a personal crisis at the time with a friend, and so like it was a difficult time. It was a really difficult time, and I think I wanted to still share the work, because I was so happy that it was premiering. I was like, oh my god, it's premiering, like. And at a festival I really respected. I was like, it's crazy, this is insane. I remember like running out of my house, like crying, screaming, like just so happy. And then like, so I was like, I think for me it was a way of just like being able to share it with an audience, even though I wasn't able to be there physically. And then kind of keep up in doing that, like as it continued, and just kind of also for me remaining like having gratitude, like it was a way of maintaining gratitude for this thing that was kind of really overwhelming, very, very overwhelming as it was happening quite quickly. So yeah, that was, I think between 2020 and 2021, that's what for me it was about, kind of just keeping up and showing like that to myself and other people. And then yeah, it was a strange experience. I don't know, it was a strange experience now looking back on it.
All of Che's social media platforms and his website are linked in the description, where you can find insightful captions as well as amazing pictures of Che. And looking to the future, it is where you can stay updated with Che's future work, especially a project called I'm the World. I'm the World is a speculative documentary that explores how an archive of networked moving images featuring famed ballroom hosts Selvin MC Devra Mizrahi and Kelly Gorgeous Gucci enables worldly ways of seeing. You know, I'm sure y'all know who MC Devra and Kelly Gorgeous Gucci are, or have seen, you know, images of them online. Truly icons, and it's amazing that Che gets to highlight them for this piece.
Yeah, so this new project, it's called, so the project entirely is actually called Scenes of Category Destruction. And this film that I'm releasing, it's called I Am the World, but there's different versions. So there's one version that's like a film cinema version, that's like one viewing, single viewing, and then there's another version that's on a loop, and it's for like gallery context. And so how I came to that work is I actually watched this video of like a Vogue kind of like aftermath series where people are being filmed after a Vogue performance in Philadelphia in 2014. And my mind was like on fire. I was like, what the hell is going on? This is amazing. Like just the way that the dynamics of the kind of the filmmaker, the participants in there, and how they kind of, but the participants are directing in some way, the filmmaker being like, I'm coming into the frame, I'm taking this presence, you need to look at me, I am the world, you know what I mean? Like I was like, period. I was just like, period. So like I remember watching it, like I had to do something with this. Whatever, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I have to do something. I was like at breakfast, just like scrolling, and I was like, you know what I mean? So in that way, fun enough, social media has actually led to new work. I should that was on Instagram. And then I ended up researching it in a class at Harvard with David Joselit, who teaches in art, film, and visual studies, and he's also a mentor of mine. He's fantastic, and he's really helped me with just even talking about this project as it's kind of continued. Because I didn't think I would release a project, but what happened was I was approached by a curator who had their film in Sheffield's program when I premiered, and he was like, "Oh, are you doing anything on digital culture?" And I was like kind of, and then like I sent him this, and then he was like, "Oh, we want to kind of work with you on this," and I was like, "Oh wow, okay." So I ended up kind of continuing the project, and now I think gonna develop it more because I'm seeing a lot, and it's become a lot more present in my life in a kind of weird kind of back and forth way, which I think relates to the project, because how I think about the people and the camera in this project is that they're redescribing a historical process from a linear point of view to kind of non-linear point of view. Because a lot of how people share the work is kind of like they share it again and again in different, like it comes up again, like comes famous, and then it comes down, like a viral again, comes down, like, and it's like, but it's the same video, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like people are remembering the last time they saw it and the thing that they associated with the last time they saw it. But also in the footage itself, for this film particularly, like one of the characters in the back, Kelly, she like is looking at the person in the foreground, and she's like, "Oh, you're here again." Like she's kind of pissed, and then, but like that itself is like bringing the past into the present, and then when it becomes famous again, it's become, into the future. And so it's kind of this process is just recurring constantly. And for me, that is just like, it's really amazing that something like that is happening in real life, and it's popular and it's famous. It's like people really like engage with it. And I wanted to honor the kind of more philosophical and spiritual aspects of this process, and try to offer not say an explanation. I try and call it like an elaboration. So it's kind of like how I see it. You know what I mean? Like, and in a way that's still able to be engaged with people on like on a filmic and just a viewable way. It's not like I'm not writing a paper because I want people to at least see how this is actually operating in the image. You know what I mean? Like in real time. And so that's how that project came about. And I'm hoping to develop it to become actually more spatial, like more installation based, and hopefully have more performance even in relation to the video. So that's what I'm in discussions right now with the curator about.
Off the bat, question that came out of that: are you on TikTok, and like how do you see that like with your work, since it's also about the digital space?
Yeah, I am not on TikTok actually, but I do see TikToks on Twitter, funnily enough. So recently there was like a thread of what TikTok do you think should win Oscars? I looked through it and I was like, oh, like something they're really good. You know what I mean? Like in terms of filmic language, you know what I mean? Like, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is amazing. I don't think I could do TikTok just because I'm like my brain would be overloaded. It'd be too much. But like, I do seek inspiration from like how people are using the platform, and like sometimes there's a lot of play with perspective and space, and like a kind of spatial choreography that I find interesting, and humor, of course, because TikTok, and so that's what I'm looking at, to be honest. But for me, like, I don't I don't produce work for social media space because of a lot of the like the more political aspects like of that, like exploitation, like surveillance, those kind of things that I'm also critiquing in the work that I produce, including in I Am the World. There's kind of a way that I'm hoping to I'm critiquing the surveillance engine of Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We could talk about a lot of these social media kind of platforms. It's a back and forth where I'm trying to understand both how people. There was this like Eileen Miles quote from a interview she did about a film. It was like a discussion she was part of, a London Review of Books, a film called Tascaffer. I'll put it in the chat. It's an alright film. It's a nice film. It's by John Berger and Andrea Luca Zimmerman. It's a kind of a film about how dogs are part of a social world, and so in a space in Turkey where they filmed it. But anyway, what she was saying was we have to occupy, like, the things that oppress us. We have to occupy it and change it. That was it's like paraphrasing. She has a more beautiful way. She's a poet. When she said that, I was like, wow, like that's how I feel about what I'm seeing with people, what people are doing specifically, in this project with social media. I didn't have the language for it until, I saw her say that. But then once she said that, I was like, that's what I want. That's what I'm trying to, bring out for people to see. Like, yeah, these things for me are actually like highly like violent in some way, in the sense that, if you think about it, like someone puts in hours of labor into making, a TikTok or a Instagram reel or like, post, and they're not going to get any financial compensation unless they, have an ad or something or business attached. But it's not actually from the labor of doing this thing. The people who make the money from the labor of doing this thing are, Mark Zuckerberg and other people like that. You know what I mean? So like, for me, it's actually just the inherent inequalities of the platforms are so egregious that I really could not make something like I'd have to really think through, like, what am I trying to put on this platform? You know what I mean? Like, or how does it connect to another forum? You know what I mean? Like, that is directing people to maybe. And so like, that's how I would think about it as a critical media maker, But yeah, I do find a lot of inspiration from how people use social media, because there's a lot of really smart things going on and intelligent things I don't are really acknowledged, even again by academia. You know what I mean? Like,
I was talking, I think you might know them, Sonia Erika.
yes.
I actually also did an interview with them, and
That's so fantastic. Yeah, I love them.
And they're talking about like, Patreon and like new modes of creating online, and and compensation and NFTs and new platforms that are doing all of that. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, like NFT for artists as a new way of being paid for your labor online.
And I mean, it's interesting. I don't know much about NFTs, to be honest. I'll put that out there first of all. I've only seen things kind of secondhand, you know what I mean? Like the headlines and the kind of like what other people have said. So full disclaimer, my inkling is not really to be too hopeful about NFTs, just because I've heard about the environmental impacts, and I'm not sure if like, that's for me. Yeah. And then, but I do think and I've heard from even like Jalen Daniels. So I think she worked for someone who's very big in the NFT space, and she finds it interesting for kind of creators to get money, but she's also concerned about this. From her, I heard about this kind of stuff. And there's also a lot of inequalities in terms of who's making the NFTs and how is the kind of, split in terms of the profit, you know what I mean? The maker might get more in terms of the code than the artist, right? Who the NFTs they made it on, you know what I mean? So again, some of the like classic, divisions, capitalist divisions are still present. So for me, it's more about like what kind of systemic change is being made with a media form or kind of technological form, which I'm not really seeing, you know what I mean? And so like once that happens, yeah, okay, let's jump on. But like the only thing I've been seeing that's happening with is Signal, to be honest, like because not just because of the encryption, but because of it's like free and like, you know, people can really like organize there and stuff. So that's like one thing I'm like, Signal's good. Um, but yeah, I think there's a lot more room for things to grow. Even during the pandemic, as you know, I was saying in 2020, there was a group of friends who we had a group chat, and we're trying to we were it was a moment of imagination. We were trying to think through what could be made, you know what I mean, like that would be more equitable even and actually translate from digital realm into, can say, even owning property in a more equitable way amongst young people. Like that was one dream we had, and we tried to talk about it. It fizzled, people, you know, things happened, but there was that moment. We had a few meetings, we talked about it seriously, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm still for like down for stuff like that, to be honest. It's actually showing at Mimesis this year in like what, 2 weeks, as a gallery version, and it's on a loop. And so like the loop is also, the video loops kind of try to loop seamlessly in a way that I don't want to say too much because I hope people have their responses to the work, but how I intend for it to be viewed is that you kind of see in some way some of the process of non-linear time, like you see that in the film itself, you know, like that's how I hope people can engage with it, and kind of I'm trying to bring that to the kind of surface, you know.
At the time that I was interviewing Che for this episode, I Am the World had still not premiered, but since then, I Am the World has been part of this year's Transmedial Closing Festival Symposium in Berlin and was also shown during this year's Mimesis International Film Festival. You can find more information about this project on Che's website, cheapplewaite.com.
As an artist who is interested in developing kind of alternative or new forms for moving image, whether that's cinema or gallery or whatever, just moving images, period. Like I'm finding a lot more I'm finding more like when I mean recognition, I don't mean like career recognition, I just mean like interpersonal, like, oh, do you see what I'm trying to do? Recognition in art spaces and art people, like art world stuff. But I think for the kinds of issues that I'm interested in intervening in, the kind of the size of the audience that I'd want to show my work to, it's definitely a film context. That makes sense. So where I'm at right now is I want to develop, I guess, my language with artworks, I think, and then see how I can maybe translate that into more narrative film work. So I am working on a film project right now, documentary film project in Trinidad. I won't say too much just because it's quite sensitive, but it is about state violence. I think it'll be a multi-year project. So how I'm thinking about it basically is, you know, as I develop artworks that for me take less time to do because it's like a personal endeavor, like it's just me, you know what I mean? Like, and then I have other collaborators, but it's really me just being like doing it. Like that allows me to develop my sense of things, and that will transition hopefully into the film as the film develops, you know. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I think with that kind of art space, I can explore installation. I really want to explore installation making, and even if I want to do objects, you know, certain objects, and see how that goes. Because I think how I relate to, well, capitalism in general is that like you kind of, like, for me as an artist, I don't think it's possible to be pure and to be outside of it, you know, like, and I think that's a fiction. And I think, and I just, how I am in personality, I confront things, you know. So I think with that, in terms of capitalism and art making or filmmaking, the work I do will confront or intervene or in some way try to reroute certain capitalist forms of production. And so that's what I'm thinking about right now, is how can I do that in a way that still makes a statement artistically, and a statement that I can put my name to and believe in.
When I interviewed Che, the series name had not yet become official, but it did end up being the most interesting people on my timeline. And in this segment, I turn it to my featured guests to put me on to something new and to tell me about the most interesting people on their timeline.
So my question for you is, like, who are the most people on your timeline?
You exposed me. I'm screaming. Because I have many different people on my timeline. Lol. Who's the most interesting person on my timeline? Lol. I don't know. I don't know.
It can be anyone. Like for me, it was like how I was like choosing people or approaching people. I was like, I love your work. I need to tell everyone about it. It's from my timeline. So like, who you're scrolling, you're like, oh, I want to share this. Like, who do you look at like that?
Okay, so someone I met actually at Mimesis Documentary Festival, a DJ, funnily enough, we met at a club, Liv Wu-Tang. I'll just put her at in the chat. Like, she's a DJ. She recently had her Berlin debut at Berghain, which is like basically the most like prestigious place to DJ in Berlin, period. She's so wonderful. She's such a sweet soul, and her she's just so talented, like as a DJ, right? And she's really invested in Black house, Black techno, like and she just knows it inside out, like Black electronic music, global electronic. She knows it inside out. So for me, I just kind of always look at her posts because I'm learning so much, and I'm also dancing, whilst I'm learning. So I'm like, damn, like, and so that's really cool. The thing I want to share is also I do keep up with them. It's Alice Yard Insta. They are a contemporary art kind of collective based in Trinidad, and they're currently in Documenta this year, which is like the biggest kind of biennial of contemporary art. It's every 5 years. Well, not biennial, it's every 5 years anyway. And they're doing a lot of projects both in Germany and in Trinidad. And it's led by Christopher Cozier, who's an established artist in Trinidad. And so I'm following what they're doing because I find a lot of the ideas they're sharing really like generative for me. And okay, Jatav. Okay, I have to add Jatavia because she's always J. I don't know like if this is the right number of underscores for her thing, but like basically it's like JG, and like she always posts really good like Black feminist and like anti-colonial like thinkers and like stuff on her timeline. And she's always posting really cool images and like, it's like really like just, and also just real shit, like, and so it's just like on point.
You can find a list of the most interesting people on Che's timeline at taniadoes.com/Che Applewhaite, and also in the description box. Che's also currently developing a new project called We Are People, which documents the ongoing effects of videos recording unlawful police murders of Afro-Trinidadians in summer 2020, which spurred community members, lawyers, and activists to unite for accountability and justice. We Are People has received support from the United Nations Anti-Racism Coalition and the Frederick Sheldon Traveling Fellowship Memorial Fund. And as if there weren't more amazing things that Che is doing, a New England document recently was screened at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., and Che will be featured in a new talk show called Generational Anxiety, which pairs creatives, artists, and activists from different generations for compelling discussions about art, culture, and society. Created and hosted by cultural commentator Bianca Vivian, the 4-episode series will make its debut on the All Arts channel, app, and website November 8th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, with weekly rollouts on Tuesdays. Che is featured in conversation with the distinguished Trinidadian American novelist Elizabeth Nunez. I'm really excited to watch that episode. I will be tuning in for the entire series, but especially for Che's episode, and I'm excited to experience more of Che's work, such as I Am the World, in the next gallery space that it will be shown in. I think would be lovely to experience it in that way. And as always, you can find all links to Che's work in the description box, as well as more content on taniadoes.com/Che Applewhaite. Thank you so much to Che for the wisdom, the insight, that he had on his filmmaking practice, just the digital world in general, and for having so much patience as I produce this episode for everyone. That's it for this episode. You can all watch all of season 1 anywhere that you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, with more information being on taniadoes.com/interesting people. Next week, I speak to an immigrant activist and aspiring lawyer who has an amazing work in calling for legislative action for undocumented people, and famously told President Joe Biden to ponerse las pilas on national television. Stay tuned for next week. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at taniadoes, and also make sure to follow the new social media platforms for this series at Interesting People Pod on Instagram and TikTok. Stay connected, stay creating beautiful things, and I will see y'all in the next episode.